you're walking around, you hear in another room, it sounds like a lightsaber. You walk in, you see that it's a room where all of the walls are drawers, and there's Darth Maul. He is carrying it. You thought it was a lightsaber, but one side is a drill, the other side is a giant pencil. These things are enormous. He's swinging them around, destroying the drawers, and he's wearing a chef's hat. You remember you are in the Memory Museum. This is just a memory palace. And the area you're in is the creativity wing, where you're in a room that represents Every Tool is a Hammer by Adam Savage. It is a combination of memoir and self-development about building things, being a creator, being a maker. I really enjoyed this book. I finished it recently and just wanted to share some highlights. It's a great book if you want to get inspired to make things, if you're in a creative rut and you want some inspiration there, or if not, and you just want to hear about someone else's process who's pretty thoughtful about how he does things. This is one of the best books I've read just about creativity and building things and sharing them with the world. One of the quotes in here, I'll read it. He says, "Whenever we're driven to reach out and create something from nothing, whether it's something physical like a chair or more temporal and ethereal like a poem, we're contributing something of ourselves to the world. We're taking our experience and filtering it through our words or our hands or our voices or our bodies, and we're putting something in the culture that didn't exist before." Which brings me to the first highlight, the first note card that I wrote. Number one, you're a maker. So that's kind of what that quote is about. And he talks about being at a maker fair, and someone came up to him and said, "Oh, I code. I'm not a maker. I just code, blah, blah, blah." And what he wants to emphasize is that just because you're not building things on Mythbusters, doing physical special effects, doesn't mean you're not a maker. And in a lot of cases, you're a maker in some way. And this is a good book for shifting your mindset around that. And so if you're currently not and you want to be, just realize that you are creative in some ways in your life, and that you can increase that if you're deliberate about it. And also, if you already do make things, then this is a good book just to hear about someone's process, and you can pick up some things. And he explains in depth like how he approaches his work. And after this, I think you'll have some ideas for how to get more organized and maybe be more confident in making things. So number 2, to make a lot of things, first make deadlines. So the book has a bunch of different tactics about building and finishing projects. So some of the things he talks about, some materials that he uses, and his approach to a project, his approach to creativity, and then some practical things like making lists, special checklists that he uses, and also, as mentioned here, the importance of deadlines. He says that if you can learn to make deadlines and you can learn to respect them, then you'll finish more projects. I really liked just the practicality of a lot of things in the book, where another thing that I really enjoyed about finishing projects is that he has a method for quitting projects. You're not going to finish everything you start, and if you want to move on to another project, then it can be distracting if you have a previous project that is still in your head a little bit, it's unfinished, you haven't really quit working on it, so it can be a distraction. What he does is to actually fully quit a project. He will, before putting it away, he'll write where he was and then what he would do if he picked it up. This reminded me a little bit of I think it's like Hemingway, that has the thing where he'll stop mid-sentence so that the next day he'll know where to pick it back up. And this is not quite the same thing because the intention is that maybe you'll just never pick this back up. But if you do, then you'll know where to start. And that can give closure to a project that you're quitting so that you can move on and fully focus on the next project. Number 3, this is supposed to be like a principles pyramid. So number 3, create things you enjoy, make it easy, and share with others. So these 3 things, the general version of these principles that I have are know yourself, design your environment, build good relationships. I think most self-development books in some way apply to these 3 different things or can be aligned to these 3 different things. And I think, so it's like know yourself, build self-awareness, that kind of thing. Design your environment. This is that idea that your habits and your routines are, and just the way that you think, if you include your environment as if you include the people that you're with as part of your environment, and in a lot of cases those are like the most powerful parts of your environment, you can design your environment to some extent to shape your behavior. And then the third one, build good relationships. This is, it's that idea of like not what you know, it's who you know, but there's a lot to that where like what you know is often based on who you know. If you have good teachers, then that will improve what you know. If you have friends that are doing the same, have the same, like friends in the community of things you're making, then that's good too. So it can give motivation, and you can just bounce ideas off each other. So back to this. So as far as specific to this book, Know Yourself, which is creating things you enjoy. And one of the things I really enjoyed is that Adam Savage writes this book and knows that his process is not universal. It's the best process he's found for himself, but he also shares things that he's heard from other people through interviews or just things just like talking to friends about what their process is around different things, around how they start and finish projects, what their thinking is. And it'll be different for different people. There's best practices for certain types of work, but also it's going to depend on how you enjoy working or how you like working or what is most important to you. And then design your environment. I think that this might have the most relevance to the book. Design your environment. So the idea here is make it easy to work. There's so much friction to just starting your work. If the space that you're in is disorganized, then it can be hard to find pieces. And in the same way that you might enjoy hearing about someone's morning routine, knowing that you're not going to do it exactly, there's that same kind of joy reading this book, just hearing in depth how he approaches things, how he uses specific tools, how he sets up his space. So one example, and this is from the Memory Palace room, where Darth Maul, so he's just destroying these drawers in the room, if you remember, like from the intro to this video. And that's supposed to represent that Adam Savage hates drawers. They're places where you can lose things, and he tries to not have drawers in his space. And again, he acknowledges that that's the best way for him to work, but some people love their drawers and have their systems and know where things are. And then design your environment. So making it easy. This can apply to like the digital world as well, which I've found. Just trying different apps and trying to streamline things to make it easier for me to make things. Then the third one, build a good relationship. So a lot of this book talks about the maker community and then the relationships that he's had. He didn't just happen to work on Star Wars. It was through the different people that he met along the way earlier in his career to build the initial love of film and special effects, then to work on lower budget movies than Episode 1, and then eventually working on Episode 1 and yeah, through the book, he describes just his career path, and then eventually working on Mythbusters, and then his post-Mythbusters career. And all of it has to do with these good professional relationships, good personal relationships, and sharing his work. And he continues to share his work. Number 4 is this idea: you'll hit constraints and that's okay. And it's actually good. So throughout the book, he describes different projects that he worked on throughout his career, and all along the way there's just different constraints on things. So early on, there's just movies with, like as mentioned, like lower budgets, so they have to work around that. Like building building a space shuttle launch scene or set with limited amounts of money. Same thing with Mythbusters. Sometimes the budget, or sometimes just people, I think it's an example of like a firefighting, I think it's like a helicopter with the water pump, and nobody that actually had that would let them borrow it for the show, so they had to build their own. And you're going to run into these constraints, and they can actually be good because that's where you can get creative with how you do things. So that's kind of like a running theme through the book, and you can give yourself constraints to try to force yourself to be a little more creative. I tried that a little bit here. So each card is supposed to be like, the first one was 1 line, the second one, you can see, so the second one was 2 lines, then 3 lines, then 4 lines, so these different shapes, and I tried to make the cards work around that. And back to the room. So actually, let me just summarize. So number 1, you are a maker. Number 2, set deadlines for yourself if you want to finish them. Number 3, make things, make it easy for yourself to make things, and then also share them with the world and build relationships. And again, the last thing was talking about constraints and creativity. So back to the room. As mentioned, he hates drawers, and Darth Maul is supposed to represent his career in, this is for me, is supposed to represent his career in Star Wars, working on episode 1 and 2. Then the pencil and the drill represent his working process, where he talks about starting projects as drawings, and that drawing is this foundational thing for all makers. And reading the book inspired me to pick up drawing again and to start practicing drawing again. And then the drill represents this idea throughout the book of knowing how to use your tools, knowing what tools work best for whatever it is you're making. And then the chef's hat represents this idea of organization. So in cooking, there's mise en place, where you prepare everything that you're going to use for a recipe before you start actually. That's the first step, is to prepare all this stuff. And then when you actually do the cooking, then everything's in its place. So prepare your space before you start working, get organized, and it will help you actually finish making things. So that's a stroll through the Memory Palace. That's just one room, and there will be more to come. Thanks for checking this out, and hit subscribe if you like this, or, just thanks for watching this.